Life can change in an instant. This was something everyone at Pine Valley Stables had to learn on a foggy October morning when their beloved horse's Spirit, one of the gentlest and most talented horses they had ever known, suffered a serious accident. That day began like any other at the family-owned stable in Montana. The leaves were turning golden, forming a carpet on the ground, and the crisp air carried the distinct scent of autumn, a mix of morning dew and earth. Spirit, an 8-year-old quarter horse, with a coat that shimmered like polished copper in the sunlight, was preparing for his morning training session. But on this morning, everything was about to change. As Spirit was being led to the training arena, something suddenly startled him, perhaps a bird taking flight or a rabbit crossing his path. No one saw exactly what happened, but everyone heard the terrible sound of hooves scrambling for traction on the wet ground, followed by a dull thud that echoed through the stable. Spirit had fallen. When he tried to get up, it quickly became clear that something was terribly wrong. His hind legs wouldn't move. Panic set in. His usually calm and gentle eyes were wide with fear. The stable manager immediately called for help, and within minutes, everyone rushed over. Dr. Chen, the veterinarian who had cared for the horses at Pine Valley for years, arrived as quickly as she could. She examined Spirit thoroughly, but her expression grew graver with each passing minute. Spirit had suffered a spinal injury. A severe swelling was pressing on his nervous system, impairing his ability to move. The diagnosis was devastating. Horses need to be able to stand to survive. Their bodies aren't designed to lie down for extended periods. Despite the stable owner's efforts to consult the best specialists, the outlook was grim. Day after day, there were more examinations and more setbacks. Everyone at Pine Valley knew that, without a miracle, Spirit's time was limited. But sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. 3 weeks after the accident, a little girl entered the stables. She wasn't even tall enough to reach the Spirit's shoulder, but she was full of determination. She was 6 years old, carrying a backpack almost bigger than herself, filled with carrots and apples. Since she was 4, she had been taking riding lessons, but Spirit had been special to her from the very first day. He was the first horse to lower his head to her, searching for treats, and the first horse she had touched without fear. When she heard about the accident, she visited him every day. She would sit by his stall, talk to him, and tell him stories, just as she had done when her little brother was sick in the hospital. "You're going to get better," she whispered to him. "You just have to figure out how to stand up again." Spirit listened to her, his eyes full of attention, as if he knew this little girl saw something the adults couldn't. And she did. While the adults talked about vet bills and difficult decisions, she looked at the problem differently. She watched how Spirit tried to move his legs, how his muscles twitched. "You want to stand up," she said to him. "You just need something to help you." Spirit whinnied softly as if agreeing with her. That weekend, something happened that would change everything. Her aunt, a physical therapist at a nearby hospital, came to pick her up from the stables. When the little girl led her to Spirit's stall, her aunt began explaining how she helped patients learn to walk again after serious injuries. "Why can't we do that for Spirit?" the little girl suddenly asked. At first, her aunt wanted to explain why it wouldn't work, but then she paused. Maybe it wasn't so impossible after all. Perhaps everyone had been so focused on traditional veterinary medicine that they had overlooked an obvious solution. That night, the little girl sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by crayons and paper. She drew picture after picture, sketching Spirit with a device that would help him stand. The drawings were simple, with wobbly, childlike lines, but they contained the seed of a revolutionary idea. Without realizing it, the little girl had set in motion a chain of events that would not only change Spirit's life, but also save countless other horses. The next morning began differently from the past few weeks at Pine Valley Stables. The little girl arrived earlier than usual, clutching a folder with her drawings. Her aunt followed closely behind, carrying a small bag of items from the physical therapy clinic where she worked. The stable owners, exhausted from the past few weeks, sat in the office, flipping through endless bills. The inevitable decision to let Spirit go hung heavily in the air. But before they could continue their discussion, the little girl burst into the room, her eyes shining with excitement. "I have an idea to help Spirit," she exclaimed, spreading her drawings on the table. The adults looked at the childish sketches drawn in bright colors. They showed Spirit supported by a kind of harness with straps that would hold his weight while he tried to stand. Arrows explained how the tension could be adjusted so Spirit could slowly practice standing. "It's like a jacket that helps you float," the little girl explained enthusiastically. Her aunt stepped forward. "In physical therapy, we use similar devices to help people learn to walk again. Why couldn't we try it for a horse?" She placed the elastic resistance bands she had brought on the table and showed videos of patients using similar devices to relearn how to walk. The stable owners looked at each other thoughtfully, then at Dr. Chen, who had just come in for Spirit's daily examination. Dr. Chen picked up one of the little girl's drawings. Her professional skepticism battled with the possibility that there might be a real chance here. "This would need to be precisely fitted," she finally said. "The support has to be in the right places so Spirit doesn't injure himself further." The little girl's aunt didn't hesitate and called a friend who worked in medical equipment manufacturing. Meanwhile, the stable owners began contacting specialists to see if a modified version could be designed for Spirit. While the adults discussed, the little girl returned to Spirit. She sat by his stall, gently stroking his neck and whispering, "The adults are finally listening, Spirit. Soon you'll be able to stand again." Spirit flicked his ears slightly, as if he understood. The following days were filled with frantic activity. Engineers drew up initial designs, veterinary experts shared their knowledge, and a local rehabilitation equipment company agreed to develop a prototype system. The little girl watched with shining eyes as her crayon drawings slowly transformed into something tangible. Then one early morning, the long-awaited day arrived. The prototype was delivered. The device consisted of a sturdy frame, soft padding for support, and adjustable straps. The stable owners, Dr. Chen, and a few volunteers gathered around Spirit, carefully fitting him into the system. They worked slowly and meticulously, careful not to strain him further. Spirit watched the bustling activity around him attentively, his gaze filled with hope and curiosity. Finally, everything was ready. The straps were gently tightened to support his weight incrementally. The little girl held her breath as Dr. Chen gave the signal to activate the system. Spirit twitched as the pressure beneath him changed. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then very slowly, he began to push himself up with his front legs. The straps held him securely as his hind legs tried to bear weight for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a perfect stand. His legs trembled, and he could only hold himself up for a few seconds before sinking back down, exhausted. But it was a start. The little girl jumped up and cheered. "Did you see that? He tried!" The adults around her stared in disbelief, tears in their eyes. They had thought they would lose him soon, but now there was hope. Dr. Chen checked Spirit's reactions, her voice trembling with relief. "This is incredible. His muscles are responding. They're weak, but they're still functioning. And more importantly, he wants to stand." The stable owners hugged each other. In just a few days, their perspective had shifted from hopelessness to a real chance at a new beginning. And it had all started with the unwavering determination of a little girl who refused to believe there was no solution. As the little girl visited Spirit that evening, she placed a carrot in front of him and whispered, "We'll try again tomorrow, Spirit, and you'll do even better." No one knew that this first small success was the beginning of a journey that would not only save Spirit's life, but also have a lasting impact on veterinary medicine. The days following Spirit's first attempt to stand were filled with tension and new hope. Everyone at the stable was now involved in the project. Engineers refined the support system, veterinarians documented every small improvement, and the stable owners did their best to manage the costs. But the little girl was the happiest, rushing to the stable every day after school to be part of Spirit's exercises. Spirit had to be gently accustomed to the new system. At first, the straps were only lightly tightened to help him get used to the unfamiliar support. His muscles were weak, but the regular exercises helped slowly rebuild his strength. The progress was small, but it was there. Everyone at the stable celebrated even the tiniest successes. One day after a particularly successful session, when Spirit managed to stay upright for almost a full minute, the little girl clapped her hands in joy. "You're so strong, Spirit. Soon you'll be walking again." Spirit turned his head toward her and whinnied softly, as if he understood her words. He seemed more attentive than ever, as if he knew that everyone here was fighting for him and believed in him. The engineers continued to improve the system, developing a device that better supported Spirit's movements. Gradually, he was encouraged to take small steps, hesitant and shaky at first, but soon it became clear that he was growing stronger. His muscles began to regenerate, and he showed more and more energy. One morning, everyone gathered in the stable to observe a new phase of therapy. Dr. Chen checked Spirit's vitals one last time and nodded. "Today, we'll try a step forward." The little girl stood within sight, holding a carrot. "Come on, Spirit, you can do it." At first, Spirit seemed to hesitate, but then his front hoof moved slightly forward. A deep breath swept through the onlookers. Then came a second step. The little girl cheered. "Yes, yes, you're doing it, Spirit." The stable owners stood with tears in their eyes. Just a few weeks ago, they had thought they would lose Spirit forever. Now they were watching him take his first steps into a new life. With each therapy session, his condition improved. Soon he could stand for a few minutes and walk short distances. The stable community worked together to support him, arranging his stall for the best possible care and ensuring he received all the attention he needed. One afternoon, as the little girl sat by Spirit's stall, telling him stories, Dr. Chen approached with a thoughtful look. "We've achieved something truly special, but there's still much to do." The stable owners nodded. "How long do you think it will take for him to fully recover?" Dr. Chen looked at Spirit, who lay relaxed on his bedding. "It's hard to say, but if he keeps this up, he has a real chance." The little girl smiled and patted Spirit's neck. "I knew it. I knew you could do it." The developments at Pine Valley didn't go unnoticed. Veterinarians and stable owners from the region began to take an interest in the new system. There were inquiries about whether the technology could help other injured horses. Reports of Spirit's progress spread through the professional community, and articles began appearing in veterinary journals. The little girl's aunt, together with the engineers and Dr. Chen, started documenting the system. Perhaps one day it could help many more horses. The hope that had once lived only in the hearts of a few people began to spread throughout the entire community. But for the little girl, only one thing mattered: that Spirit was happy again. And when, one morning, he stood for a few seconds without assistance, she knew this was just the beginning. She ran through the stable, cheering and hugging everyone who had helped. "He did it! Spirit really did it!" she exclaimed. Spirit wasn't fully healed yet, but the path was clear. The small, brave step he had taken that morning was the beginning of a long but hopeful journey to full recovery. With each day, Spirit grew stronger. His progress was slow but steady, and everyone at the stable knew they were witnessing a small miracle. The little girl was there every afternoon to motivate him, and his therapy sessions became a regular part of the stable's routine. Dr. Chen began documenting how Spirit's muscles were regenerating, discussing the possibilities of further developing the system with other veterinarians. The stable owners, who had once worried about the financial burden, now saw that Spirit's story was not only bringing hope, but also attracting new supporters. One morning, after weeks of intense exercises, the day came when Spirit took a step without assistance. It wasn't a big step, but it was a step on his own. The entire stable community held their breath as Spirit slowly took a second and then a third step. The little girl jumped for joy. "You did it, Spirit! You really can!" Spirit whinnied softly, his eyes full of life. It was a moment no one would ever forget. The news spread quickly. Other stables and veterinary clinics heard about Spirit's progress. The engineers who had developed the support system were contacted to make it available for other injured horses. The stable owners decided to hold a demonstration, inviting veterinarians, rehabilitation specialists, and horse lovers from the region. Spirit would show that even a seemingly hopeless case could have a future. The day of the demonstration arrived. Spirit wasn't fully healed yet, but he stood on his own legs. As he slowly but surely walked through the stable, the audience held their breath. The little girl walked beside him, her smile radiating pride. After the demonstration, there were numerous inquiries. The stable owners received support from universities and research centers. Dr. Chen and the little girl's aunt began writing a scientific paper on the newly developed system. Spirit had become not only a symbol of hope for Pine Valley, but for the entire horse world. And the little girl knew this was just the beginning, but the journey was far from over. Despite the progress, daily life at the stable remained challenging. Spirit still had to train every day to rebuild his strength. The little girl was always by his side, encouraging him and telling him stories from her books. Every small success was celebrated, and with each week, he could move more freely. The news of Spirit's progress reached a renowned veterinary university. Scientists became increasingly interested in the new support system and began researching it. Representatives from a well-known rehabilitation center came to Pine Valley to see the system in action. They were impressed by how much Spirit's condition had improved. Dr. Chen was invited to speak at a veterinary conference about Spirit's story. Together with the engineers and the little girl's aunt, she presented the system's successes. They discussed the possibilities of extending the concept to other animals, giving them a second chance as well. Meanwhile, Spirit grew stronger every day. He managed to trot short distances and even interact with the other horses in the paddock. His spirit had returned. The little girl watched him and knew that her unwavering hope had been the key to it all. When one day he trotted toward her on his own, she couldn't hold back her tears. She gently stroked him and whispered, "I knew you could do it." The change that began with Spirit not only saved his life, but also transformed the entire perspective on horse rehabilitation. The work at Pine Valley became a model for other stables and veterinary clinics worldwide, and it all started with a simple question from a little girl: why can't we help him? A year had passed since Spirit took his first cautious steps. The leaves turned golden once again, and the air was filled with the familiar scent of autumn and hay. But in Pine Valley, nothing was the same anymore. The stable had transformed from a simple riding facility into a place of hope and healing. Spirit stood in the paddock, his copper-colored coat gleaming in the morning sun. His gait wasn't perfect yet, but he could now move freely, trot, and even gallop short distances. More importantly, he was happy. His journey had inspired many people, and his fighting spirit had become a symbol of courage and perseverance. The little girl, now 7 years old, sat on the fence, watching him with a smile. She had promised him that one day he would walk again, and she had been right. But Spirit's story wasn't over yet. On this day, they were expecting special guests. Families with children facing special challenges had come to participate in Pine Valley's new therapy program. The stable owners had decided that Spirit wouldn't just remain a symbol of hope, he would actively help others. The stable was decorated with colorful balloons, and in the distance, the laughter of children excited for the special day could be heard. A little boy who hadn't spoken since a car accident was gently led to Spirit by his parents. Hesitantly, he reached out and touched Spirit's nose. The adults held their breath. Seconds passed, and then the miracle happened. The boy whispered a single word: "Horse." His mother covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. It was the first time her son had spoken in months. The little girl beamed, knowing that Spirit had once again done something incredible. As the days passed, the news of Spirit's new mission spread. The stable owners opened a rehabilitation center for injured horses and a therapy program for children with special needs. Spirit became the figurehead of this project, and the support system that had helped him was now used worldwide. Dr. Chen and the little girl's aunt worked with scientists to further develop the system. Reports of its effectiveness were presented at veterinary conferences, and more stables began using it. It became known as the Child's Hope System, named after the little girl who had never given up hope. Universities began incorporating the system into their studies, and horse owners from around the world sought advice from Pine Valley. The media started reporting on Spirit's amazing journey. Reporters visited the stable to write about the little girl and her brave friend. A documentary was made to tell the extraordinary story of Spirit and the innovative rehabilitation method. The world learned about the once injured horse who had become a beacon of hope for many. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the little girl sat by Spirit's side as usual. She stroked his neck and whispered, "You're the best horse in the world, you know that." Spirit nudged her gently with his soft nose and whinnied softly, as if agreeing with her. In that moment, the little girl knew they had created something special together. Spirit hadn't just reclaimed his own life. He had touched countless others. The memories of their journey would remain forever. That evening, the entire stable community gathered together. They celebrated Spirit's second chance, shared stories of his struggle and triumph, and the stable owners announced they would establish an annual event, the Spirit Festival, a day of hope for all animals and people seeking healing. And so, this story didn't end with a farewell, but with a new beginning, a legacy of hope that would live on forever. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Thanks to our valued viewers, we continue to improve every day. Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.